Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. We have such a fabulous guest with us today. Dupe Witherick is in the room. How are you doing, Dupe?
Oh my goodness, I'm so well, Carolina, and thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast again. I'm
Yeah.
really pleased. I'm really excited.
Well, yeah, so for anyone, this is the second time Dube's been on. The first time she really shared her story of leaving behind corporate and writing a book and getting a podcast and just really rediscovering her passion in life and an alcohol-free journey. And now I'm so excited to have you come back because I can't wait to go so deep into human design. This is something you're such an expert at, and I think you're going to give so much value to the listeners on human design, how it relates to their alcohol-free journey, how it relates to their careers. So I can't wait to get started. But before we do, can you remind everyone who you are and maybe your story kind of in a nutshell?
Gosh, yes, thank you, Carolina. So I'm Dupe Witherick. I'm the founder of Thrive Alcohol Free. I'm a mindset and success coach specializing in the alcohol-free lifestyle. And I'm an author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity and Thrive Alcohol Free. And I am the podcast host of Thrive Alcohol Free. And I was recently told that I'm the finalist on an awards for that podcast, which was very exciting. And then I am also, gosh, the host of a retreat. I'm doing the Find and Freedom retreat in Bali, and I am a human design consultant. So you'll learn a bit about human design, but it shows that I'm very much a manifesting generator, which basically means I'm multi-passionate, busy bee, do all the things, multi-talented, and hence me doing all the things with my business.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get into all of it. And real quick, just to paint a picture, like where were you before all of this?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I was in the corporate world for 20 plus years. And when I think about that, I was in a completely different space. Well, in a way, I was probably doing lots of different things as well. But I was very much, I would say I had a very normal trajectory. From a drinking standpoint, I probably started drinking when I really went to university. I probably dabbled a little bit just before university, as you do, but then it was when I got to university that I realized that, that was the glue that everyone did. That's what made you an adult. That is what really just kept you on this path of fitting in and being normal. And then went into the city, and again, it was very much work hard, play hard environment. And with my role, I managed to travel the world a lot. So a lot of networking, a lot of client meetings, a lot of meeting new people all the time. There was one year I did 13 countries in a year. And so I always felt that alcohol gave me something. It made me confident. When I had to go and socialize and meet with people after work, it meant that I could have conversations. And it was giving me something. And then we had our daughter when I was in my 30s, and I got absorbed with the whole mummy wine culture. Of course, again, you're meeting new people, creating new friendships. And what do? You think, right, what have we got in common? Ah, we both drink. Excellent. Let's have a glass while the children play. That again was just something that seemed to be normal. And so I would have described myself as a normal drinker. But again, I suppose it depends on the environment you're in. And I surrounded myself with people that were all the same. So of course, you're going to think that that's normal. And fast forward to 2020, which was the year I turned 40, and I was very fortunate. I managed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in March. And so we all know what happened in March 2020. There was a lockdown towards the end of March, but I summited on the 5th of March by, unbelievable when I look back at it, because a week later we were in lockdown when I got back. And during that time, I had this real sense that there was more. You're on this mountain, you're sort of like doing something you've never done before, 6 nights on a mountain camping. Oh my goodness. For me, that wasn't what I did. I didn't do camping, but it was an amazing, incredible experience. And it just got me thinking that there was something more I needed to do. I needed help. I needed to serve in some way. But then obviously COVID happened and that all went out the window. I didn't even get a chance to really celebrate the fact that we had raised all this money for charity, and it had been an amazing experience. And the year went on, and I found that I was
I was just trying to survive. I think we were surviving. There was no thriving. We were trying to just get through every day. We were homeschooling. I was working all hours. It felt like I had no real routine. I wasn't really keeping like good habits. And at the end of the day, I was like, right, I'll have a glass of wine to unwind, or gin and tonic, probably in my case, to unwind. And yeah, and it got to November and I was just tired of it. I was like, why? I don't enjoy it. It wasn't really settling on me anymore. I couldn't drink certain drinks that I used to drink. It just, after a glass of heavy red wine, it would give me a headache. So I went off that. And it got to the point where I was like, right, I'm going to take a 21-day break. So I decided to take a 21-day break from alcohol. I had the opportunities. My church at the time was basically saying, do give something up for 21 days. So I thought, well, it's a good opportunity to have a reset, get better habits. I always loved exercising and doing all of that, but I just felt like other than that, I wasn't really getting out in nature. I wasn't doing anything. And so I took this 21-day break, fully expecting it to only be 21 days. And here we are 4.5 years later.
Wow, congratulations. I love to hear the origin story behind all of this like start and this huge mountain you summited to like really have this awakening in your life to really start you down this path. And that's led to you so many things. You've also, left the corporate world and become this digital nomad and, traveling and leading
Yes.
retreats. And it's just so magical. But I can't wait to bring your expertise today on human design because I think this is one of those topics that's thrown around a lot. People are familiar with the term, but it's really confusing. It's one of those things that like you can sign up somewhere on a random website and get this really complicated chart and then have no idea what's going on and how to read it. So I think it'd be so cool to learn a little bit from you, such an expert on all the human design types. And then we can go a little bit more specific as well. Like, I wonder, I'm super curious if you've seen a difference between how some people relate to their human design type and maybe their relationship to alcohol or how they decide to go alcohol free or anything like that. So why don't we start at like I love to always, assume that yeah, we know nothing myself. So what if we just start with what are the types and how would you know what type you are and what are the kind of characteristics of each?
Gosh, okay. So let's start, as you say, this is multi-layered. So just to take a quick step back before we go into the types, human design, if you really have no idea what it is, and I know a lot of people still don't know what human design is, but I think it's something that everyone should know. It's a self-awareness deconditioning tool, and it's really a system of differentiation. It really shows that we're all unique. And actually, the way the world's designed, it's designed for us to really be homogenous. We're all doing the same thing. We all have to follow the crowd. We all have to, we all have to drink at 18 because that's what everyone does. And so we all believe that actually, and even things like the workplace and the whole 9 to 5, that's really helpful for about 70% of the population, but for 30% of the population, it doesn't work. So again, human design just helps you understand yourself better. And as you rightly said, Carolina, there are 5 types. And so each of the types have certain characteristics, and then they have a strategy, and they also have what we call a signature. When you know you're in the right place doing the right thing, everything's working, versus a not self theme, which is when you're absolutely in the wrong place. You need to change what you're doing. You need to think about where you are. And so the 5 types are manifestor, generator, manifesting generator, projector, and reflector. And so let's take them one by one. And hopefully whoever's listening will maybe guess what they are based on the description from a high level perspective of each of the types. So for the manifestor, really, the manifestor is here to initiate, to trailblaze, to start movements. They are here to really, they'll suddenly have an urge, they'll have a thought, and they're like, right, I'm doing it. This is what I'm building. They'll create something that's just like a movement. And it's an amazing thing. And so they really need the freedom to be themselves and carve their own paths, but they do need, their strategy is to inform. So they need to tell people what they're doing, otherwise they can really annoy people. So yes, they get the urge. They can absolutely, they don't need permission. They're not asking for permission, but they just need to let people know what they're doing. And in a way, they can trigger people because they come up with these like wild ideas, these wild things that they need to do. But they're not here to please people. They're here to really trust their urges and their convictions. And about 9% of the population are manifestors. And when I talked about their signature, when they are doing the right thing, they're really in their flow, aligned, as a manifester, you'll have a real sense of peace. But when you're in your not self theme, you may feel angry all the time. And actually, manifested children are quite challenging because, as you can imagine, as a child, you can't just go off and do what you want to do. You can't just get this urge and think, I want to go off and do that. And so their parents are constantly reining them in. So another thing with human design is a lot of us have been conditioned depending on who we are surrounded by and depending on the energy types around us, because we're all energy. Ultimately, people feel our energy before they really see us. So I'm sure there are times for you, Caroline, where you've gone into rooms and you've got this sense of, oh, actually, this is a really cool place. I've got like a really good sense of the energy. And then other times you've walked into a space and you're like, there's something feels off. I don't want to be here. And you might want to walk off, because about 6 feet wide around us is our energy aura. And there's amazing photographers who take photos of people's energy and you see like the light around them. And so energy is really important. But but for a manifester, as I said, people might have been conditioned where they're not in their full power. And so as adults, they'll suddenly get these urges and they'll get these thoughts, but then they may think they can't act on it because they've been told as a child they need to not show that they've got these, what is really, leadership qualities, being able to go out and create something that's completely new for others and just get on with it. So that's the manifester. And then if we move on to the generator, which is about 37% of the population. So a lot of people are either generators or manifesting generators. As I said, they make up about 70% of the population. And generators are the real motors of society. And the reason they're generators and manifesting generators because they have they're sacral defined. And I'll talk about that briefly when we maybe go on to your chart. But with manifesting generators, their sacral's defined, which means they have this like constant access to energy. So imagine, I always compare it to the Duracell bunny. So that you remember the Duracell bunny who was like, keep going, keep going, keep going. And they just keep going because they have this energy as long as they're doing something that lights them up, that brings them joy, that really excites them. If they're doing something, they can work all hours and they can keep going. But if they're doing something that's really not aligned, that really isn't something that lights them up or brings them joy, that's when they can start to experience burnout. And so it's really important we always do things that we don't want to do, of course. There's always going to be a percentage of things we want to do, don't want to do, but there are obligations that maybe we all say yes to, because again, generators tend to sometimes have the challenge of being people pleasers because they know they can do it, so they just say yes, and people then expect them to do things because they're used to them getting stuff done, and so sometimes they get burned with lots of things if they don't set boundaries. Again, they can burn out because they're sort of people pleasing. They're not actually looking at things that bring them joy. And so they end up with like lots of obligations that they have to do. Whereas what they should be focusing on is the things that bring them joy. So there's a balance to be had. So it's trying to reduce the number of obligations, knowing there's always going to be about 10% of stuff that you don't want to do. And then, about 35% of things should bring you joy. 35% of things should bring you, the obligations you have to do. And then that gives you about 20% of space for free time. And why is that important for the generator and the manifesting generator? Having that free time enables you to really respond. So your strategy as a generator and a manifesting generator, and we'll go into the manifesting generator because they are slightly different. They're different types, but depending on where you've learned about it, you might say that it's the same type, but I like saying that they're different. That's how I learned it as well. But basically, they're strategies to respond. And so if you haven't got that free time, you won't be letting things in that you need to respond to. So imagine people at work, see your calendar, and they won't obviously see the specific meetings, but if they see it's completely full, they won't ask you to take that new opportunity, or they might not think you have the space or capacity to do it. It's similar for generators and manifesting generators. If you are completely full with all the obligations and all the, bit of joy time, a bit of things that you have to do, if you've only got 5% of free space, then you're not going to get things to respond to. And your strategy is to respond. So that's not responding to things inside of you, it's responding to things outside of you. So if you suddenly think, oh, I'd really like to go, you have this sort of thought, oh, I'd love to go to Italy on holiday. Don't do anything about it until you see a post on Instagram, or until you see an advert on the TV, because then you're responding to something outside of yourself. And again, your strategy is something, if you follow your strategy and authority, your type, then really you can start to live life with the least resistance. So the signature for generators and manifesting generators, I'll talk about that separately, but generators, the signature, when they're doing the right thing at the right time, they have a deep sense of contentment. It's actually satisfaction, but that sense of fulfillment, that sense of really being, things are working out, it's good, life's good. If they're not doing the right thing and they're really in the wrong place, probably in the wrong career, their not self theme is frustration. And the number of times I felt frustrated, and I'd say it all the time, I'm so frustrated. And this was before I knew human design. Frustration is the thing that makes you think, actually, I'm not really doing what I need to do, or I'm not quite where I want to be. Is it all making sense so far? I'm conscious I'm sharing lots of information, but I'll keep going if that's okay. And then the manifestor, that's about 33% of the population. And they're excited. And again, they have the sacral, so they have this energy that can keep going, do yourself body energy, as I mentioned. But they're excited by doing different things. So they're not really, as a generator, you tend to focus on one thing and you master that. As a manifesting generator, you can do lots of different things. And so they're multi-talented, multi-passionate, and they're here to do a variety of things, have multiple careers, have multiple hobbies. Their life isn't meant to be linear. It's not meant to be climbing a corporate ladder. It's meant to be like that squiggly line. They're going to go all over the place. They're not going to, they're not really here to sort of follow a key path. And actually, they're here to create a life that shows what's possible to others. So in a way, they're here to sort of go ahead and do something that's a bit wacky, for people to then say, oh, actually, you saw something that we didn't quite see. And so they're here to really skip steps as well and do things differently. But then they can have from a challenge perspective, they could have these beliefs that they're a bit flaky, or that they're not quite sticking with things, but they're allowed to pivot. They're allowed to do that. And so giving yourself permission as a manifesting generator to do that is important. But the likelihood is that a lot of manifesting generators have been stuck in jobs that they no longer like them about. And so they get afraid, they're afraid to let them go, because they think, I need to stick with it. I need to be like a generator, because that's what, that's the perception, that you have to stick with something. But actually you're allowed to let that career go, or let that thing go, and start on something else, or do something else alongside it. So you'll hear, if you meet a manifesting generator, you'll know it's them when they say they're doing X, Y, and Z, and they're completely different things in completely different directions, and they're so fired up by it all. And again, they have the same signature, which is the satisfaction, and then the frustration of the not self theme. But because they have the manifestor in them as well, manifesting generator, it's a combination of the two, you can see the peace and the anger as well. So that's the manifesting generator. Then we move on to the projector, who are about 20% of the population, and they're the guides, the seers, the observers. They're the ones that really innovate here, and they see what's wrong, and they can call it out quite easily. They can see what's missing, and they make things better. But I suppose the challenge with them is they need to be invited. So their strategy is to wait for the invitation, which means they have lots of wisdom, lots of guidance. They have a gift that they're meant to share with the world. They're incredibly gifted people. brilliant people. They're here to share a gift, but they need the invitation. So if you're a projector and you've been really excited about something, you've got this gift that you need to share, and you tell someone and they're not ready to hear it, they will shut you down, and then they'll make you feel bad or make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about because they're not ready, because they haven't asked you to tell them. So it's all about waiting for the invitation, so that you actually get seen and recognized and valued, because that is your fuel and that is what you're here to do as well. But again, it's really important for them to manage their energy in the right way, because when they with projectors, they're incredible. My husband's a projector, so I've got experience of it, but he can do so much in like 3 or 4 hours, which is why earlier when I was talking about the workplace is designed for people to do sort of an 8-hour day. Projectors can get everything done in a few hours, so actually they're better off working from home, having flexibility, being able to start and stop. As long as they get the stuff done, which they will, they then need time to rest. That's really important for their energy type. And so again, it's understanding the difference between them. They have this like subtle ebb and flow of energy, and it's just important, I think, when we look at people, we need to realize that everyone's different and everyone works differently, and one size doesn't fit all. So that's always interesting with the projector. And their signature, which sometimes puts people's back up a bit, is success. But what I say to that is success can be anything you want it to be. Your success, whatever feeling successful is how a projector knows that they're in the right place doing the right thing. And so success is their signature, and their not self theme is bitterness. So they can get a bit bitter if they're not recognized, if they're not seen, if they're not able to contribute and be seen, then they might feel a bit bitter. But it's waiting for the right invitation, and the invitations will come. They are like billboards. People do come to them. People think of them immediately about their specific gift when they know what they do. And so that's the projector. And then finally, the reflector, which is 1% of the population. So they're not many, but I met a reflector the other day, and that was my first reflector who I did a little reading for. And that was quite exciting for me, because they are the unicorns, they're the snowflakes, and they're really here to reflect the environment. So they're a source of wisdom, and they basically reflect the people around them and their environment. They're the truth tellers. They don't actually, and the reason they're reflectors is because all of their centers are open or undefined, which basically means, we'll talk about that briefly, but it means that they're actually taking on everyone else's energy. So they're really here to live in the present. They need to be in environments and spaces that make them feel good. Otherwise, they feel it really personally. And they also need to wait for a lunar cycle. That's their strategy. They need to wait for a month to really work out what to do, how to work, etc. And so they're just like magical beings that reflect their environment. It's really interesting. But being present in the moment is really important for them as well. And letting go of expectations as well is another thing that they need to do, because obviously with living in the present moment, they just need to sort of go with the flow and let things come. So that's the reflector, and their signature is surprise. So when they're doing the right thing, they have this sort of sense of awe, surprise, a bit of, oh gosh, okay, this is cool. And then their not self is disappointment. And so that's the 5 types. And with the types, I recently created a quiz which your listeners can download. But again, the types tell you so much. I've obviously just sort of whistle-stop tour of all of them, but they tell you so much. But that's literally just the start of human design. There is so much more underneath that, which is what's really exciting. So I'll stop there and see if you've got any questions.
Well, I love it. And actually, I remember the first time I was introduced to human design, maybe it was 2019 or 2020. And I remember, getting the result. I'm a generator, right? And I think I felt a little disappointed because I was like, oh, I'm just like a workhorse. course. Like what? I didn't really understand it. And I think that's when I started wanting to understand even deeper layers behind that. Because, basically when you get a human design chart, it's this really complicated, it almost looks like some kind of like geographic, like geometric, like, star compilation. It's super, esoteric and kind of random looking. And there's so much more to it than just the five energy types. So then I think once I started learning a little bit more about myself, I could see like the beauty and like really starting loving and honoring the type that I was instead of just having those like first five categories to go through. And there's so many layers to it, right? So like there's just so many
Mm,
different other attributes or energy centers and all this kind of stuff that you're referring to that honestly, I think you have to
mm,
sometimes just do a reading with someone to really know your type. But I thought it would be
yeah.
fun if you were able to maybe read me. And so we prepared for this. I know you have my chart.
Yes,
So I wanted to go into
I
all the
do.
other, like the nuances of a human design chart reading. And I know we don't have time to do all of them. That would be impossible. That would
Mm.
take probably a whole week of work to do. But I'm curious if you can introduce us to all the other, specificities of what human design can share with you, like your profile and your authority and your, definition. You'll know this better than me. And then maybe we can
Yeah.
just one example of my chart through.
Oh my goodness. It was so amazing when I was going through your chart, Carolina, because obviously I've got to know you over the years and it just blew my mind. It always reminds me of just how powerful this tool is because it's you. This is it's describing you. And so, yeah, you're right. There's so much to it. And so let's go through it. So the profile, as you mentioned, is the character that you're meant to play in the world. And so it's really how you're supposed to show up and in your most authentic way. And actually, before we do that, let's start with the authority, because as I said, if you know your type, strategy, and authority, you're pretty much good to go. You can kick off your human design journey, and then you can go into the next levels. So your authority is a sacral, and the authority is basically how you make aligned decisions, how you make good decisions for you in the right way. Look at it like a Google Maps, it's sort of directing you and it's steering you in the way that you need to go. And so your authority is sacral, which is basically every decision is based on your gut feeling. You will know, you'll have this real sort of yes or no sensation, impulse, inner wisdom instantly that it's the right decision and it's authentic to you. And I like to say, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. So starting with that and just thinking, well, is it really a strong yes or is it just a no? And with the sacral, maybe when you were younger, the way that would have shown up as a child is we make these sort of visceral sounds like or and then we're told that's rude, but that's your gut basically giving you that answer straight away. Or it's that leaning forward, or oh no, that's a no, I'm moving, I'm repelling, I'm moving back. So it could be the movement as well. But it's that real sense of, in the moment, gut reaction. What is it? What's my body saying? What is my initial sort of guttural sound saying? And that's how you know it's the right answer. So I'm curious, when it comes to making decisions for you, do you think you use your gut or would you say something else?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, like, what are you? Like, what's the other type? Like, what other options are there? You have to go through all of
You
writing.
always want something else, Carolina. So yeah, no. So there's the emotional authority, the emotional authority, which is to sleep on it. So when you make a decision, it's about sleeping on that decision. It's not making it in the moment. It's making it, and it's funny because they say it's emotional, but you're not meant to make it when you're feeling really high or feeling really low. You need to be on like this even keel
Yeah.
in order to do it.
Okay, yeah, with
So
that comparison, that's helpful. Yeah, I definitely can agree with the gut one. It's like I know, and especially if something I'm supposed to do or like a yes, it just doesn't go
yeah,
away. You know what I mean? Like that's like
yeah,
a really true mark of it. It truly doesn't go away. And
yeah,
then the no's don't go away either. It's like you try to ignore it and it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this, or like you feel that gut feeling. But
yeah,
you obviously the logic comes in, the brain tries to explain it away, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely
yeah.
feel that.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So that's your authority. And then if we move on to your profile, as I said, it's the character that you're meant to play. It's how we operate in the world. And it's based on sort of two numbers. So you're a 5-2. The first number is your conscious number. So you'll probably recognize the 5 from a sort of personal experience. But then the second number is how other people see you. So that's the 2. And that's the sort of unconscious number. However, after the age of 40, most people become aware of both numbers. So both the 5 and the 2, it seems quite natural. So with the 5-2, it's really interesting. You delve deeply into subjects to explore universal truths. And then you're like an ambassador and you're here to share your insights in a really understandable way that makes it really applicable for others and they can really understand it. So you attract and inspire people with your knowledge, and you're always searching for greater understanding and the opportunity to serve others. So when I sort of saw that you were a 5-2, I was just like, that's amazing. But you know, you also balance the desire to sort of share that knowledge with time to retreat. So that's the 2. The 2 is really the hermit. So and the 5 is really the need to find sort of practical solutions to problems to people, and you're really here to impact strangers more than you are to impact people that are close to you. You have the potential to have a big message. Think book, think speaking on stages, think podcasts, and you again, you know, what you deliver will be in a new way of solving a problem that lots of people have. So that is the 5 side. And then the 2, as I said, is more of the hermit. And it's that you can sort of say you might identify as an introvert, but it's really about you liking to have time alone to indulge in your own passions and to do your own thing. And you know, you sort of share, you then go on to share, you know, what's naturally important to you and show people more than telling them, because you're actually showing people based on your experience. But you sort of hermit away, do all of that, gather all your sort of genius, and then you share it with people. And so when, you know, I don't know, you should probably speak for yourself, Carolina, but when I describe that to you, how does that sound?
Oh, spot on. Like so spot on. And I love that understanding too, because there is this part of me that wants to like impact the world and just be on all the stages and just like have so much of a sense of meaning to my life's work, basically. And then there's this other
Yeah.
part of me that's like, I'm turning everything off. It's Friday morning. I'm going away for the weekend. I'm not to be bothered. I need to read 5 to 20 books now. So, and sometimes it's interesting because like when one person's in the driver's seat, I often can guilt myself for being a little bit of that hermit, you know, like, oh, I need to be
Yeah.
doing more. I should be, you know, living this magnanimous big life, but it's so necessary for me. Like I really need that
Mm.
time. And sometimes I'm not, it's not obvious to how much I need it, but then it's like that's what really helps spark the creativity for other things. And I need to just stop guilting myself for it. Just like allow myself to
Yeah.
have time. I love it.
Absolutely, allow it. That is you. That's the aligned you, and so enjoy that. Absolutely. So that's the profile. We can talk briefly about the definition. It's probably easier to see it on the chart, but basically you're a split definition. So you have sort of 2 parts. So with the body graph, there are 9 energy centers, and this is what the human design is, the body graph basically. And so the different centers and the way they're grouped through channels, it shows whether it's a split definition, single definition, triple definition, or quadruple definition. You're a split definition, which basically means that you have like energy with 2 centers or 3 centers here, and then but they're not connected. So a single definition basically means you can go through the whole body graph and you can connect them in some way. But then a split definition means that they're separated. So again, when I do actual sessions with people, I show them the body graph so they understand what I mean. It's a bit more challenging to describe it, but it means things like, from a practical sense, that you probably come up with, in order to sort of merge merge the centers and get the energy centers or the energy from others when it comes to creating ideas or coming up with ideas and things like that, and yeah, thoughts and potential projects, you work quite well in a space where there are other people. So you're not necessarily interacting with them, but if you're in a coffee shop, for example, ideas might come because you're sharing the energy that from others to connect all of the energy centers in one flow, if that is clear. So that's the definition, but again, that's nuance. That's something that I can go into in a bit more detail, but I think I'll stop there so as not to confuse your listeners. And then we, as I said, go into the actual centers themselves, and they're different shapes. And what you'll find is that some of the centers are going to be colored, some of the centers are going to be white, clear centers. And with those centers that are colored, that means they're defined. It means you have consistent energy coming into that center. You have a real sense of that center. It's yours, it's constant. And then when it's undefined, that means that you are actually taking on energy from others. So interestingly enough, one of your undefined centers is the emotional solar plexus, which is why you're a sacral, because the majority, it's the emotional solar plexus. If you've got that defined, that's automatically the first one. Then it's the sacral, but you've got that undefined. And so I'll be really curious if you've experienced this, but what it means is you're taking on other people's emotions, feelings, potentially more so because you're undefined, so you're taking that on from other people. So you might have, I don't know if your husband is a defined emotional solar plexus, it'll be interesting to know, or if someone close to you is, but you might have gone into a room feeling really happy, really excited, really upbeat, but they're feeling a bit low. And then over time, you suddenly find yourself going quite low, taking on that negative energy. And so again, with the undefined of any center, you're basically taking on other people's ideas. For example, if it's your head or crown center, you're taking on problems and things that probably don't belong to you. And so again, it's gaining wisdom, because it's really then using your strategy and authority to say, is this for me, or is this something I can just ignore that isn't for me? And again, I go into a lot more detail. But within each of the centers, you'll see these numbers as well. And each number is a gift, it's a strength, and it's technically a gate, but I like calling them strengths because it's just easier for people to understand. And so each number, you'll see just loads of numbers on this chart, and the ones that are coloured in are your specific strengths. And so each energy center tells you something. You've got challenges on each of the energy centers as well, again, if it's defined and undefined. But what I love going through are people's strengths, and that really brings me joy. And so I wanted to just touch on a few of your strengths, if I could, just so that you can get a sense of some of the strengths that you have. So a couple of your strengths are ideation. So your gift is ideation. So your mind is a like 24/7 idea factory. You come up with all these ideas, but one thing you have to realize, you've got like infinite ideas, you can create anything. One thing you have to realize is that not all ideas need to be realized by you. So you can't, they might be really good ideas. And I don't know whether you've had that moment where you're like, oh, all these things that I want to do and I want to, and then actually, some of them are for you to do, of course, but you can delegate, you can sort of share that, and you can just say, that's just not for me. Another, I'm only going to pick out a few, but another one is reflection. So you have the ability to really distill and share important insights and lessons from stories and experiences that you've encountered. So again, with what you do, that's you. That's a gift that's yours. And another one is logic. So you have the ability to really collect and analyze data in a way that is clear for others to understand, and you can explain it really well and share that. You've got a gift of storytelling. So you're really here to share your point of view, on life, and you have the ability to really share it in a way that both educates and entertains. And so again, that's part of your role, I suppose. You've got an adventurous spirit. That's another gift that you've got. Unconditional love. You have the ability to really look at the world and people around you with an unwavering sense of wonder or acceptance, which I love that gift. I think that's a beautiful gift. You also have the gift of persuasion. So you have the potential to be incredibly influential, and you have the ability to sell anything to anyone. So, that made me laugh. But also you have a really important gift, which is the gift. It's the gate of shock, but it's the gift of being impactful. So you're here to empower people to reach their full potential by encouraging them to find their edge and move out of their comfort zone. You can see as I was going through this, Carolina, I was reminded of how special this tool is and how much of an impact it can have, especially for people who might not even know that these are their gifts. Because the other side of all these gifts, when you're not aligned, when you're not doing what you're meant to be doing and living your best life, then you're in your shadow. And so each of these gifts has a shadow. And if you're not in your gift, you've got the shadow. And so I wonder if prior to you doing what you've been doing for the past 6 years, 7 years, whether you were living more in your shadow. So one of your shadows, for example, was victim mentality. So you were a bit sort of like, nothing's working out. I'm a bit of a victim. I wonder if that was something you saw. Another shadow is dissatisfaction. Again, you have the adventurous spirit, so the dissatisfaction is the shadow of that. If you feel like your life isn't adventurous enough, then you may look to fill this void with substances so that aren't aligned. So again, we're seeing the people, there are certain gates that if people are living in their shadow, they're maybe more likely to drink. And so it's a really fascinating tool. And so when I look at people's gifts, some people recognize them, other people just aren't there yet because they're not fully aligned. And actually what is really powerful is when they realize they're living in their shadow, it's then how do we shift that? How do we start to look at how they can move into their gifts? How can they start to create the life that they want to live? How can they have the career that they want to have, etc.? And that's the beginning of coaching for me. And that's where we go on a bit of a 6 to 12-month journey to really start going through what's missing, what are the potential limiting beliefs, fears, etc., that they're living in to get them out of that so they are fully aligned. And that's where human design comes into everything I do.
Okay, Dupe, I am blown away because I have definitely had my human design chart analyzed. I know the character before, I understand kind of the authority, my type, and all that kind of stuff, but I've never had someone read me my strengths the way that you just did. And like something just unlocked for me so much so to really put these almost on like almost like how you remember your values of like, am I living in
Yeah.
alignment with these things? And if something's off, it's probably because one of these things is missing. And you're spot on. I definitely like played a victim before I ditched alcohol and then just felt so unfulfilled and dissatisfied with my life. There was always this different version I felt like I was meant to be living, but I wasn't doing that or anywhere close to it. So that is really, really cool. I could see the value of being able to really get into understand your own gifts. And obviously, it's not just a reading. Like you discover with people like, okay, this is where you're living in your shadow. Like, let's actually change your life, shift it in ways, both with the personal development and the identity work and the embodiment and the strategy behind it to actually make those changes. I think that's so freaking cool. I'm curious, like you've talked a little bit about how when you're living in your shadow, obviously you might be using alcohol or something like that. Have you found like any, I'm sure you've, done readings on a lot of people by now. Like, have you found any specific ways that some people cope when they're living in their shadow or their what did you call it? The non-sense self?
Not self, not
Not
self.
self. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like how does alcohol come to play the negative habit or role in some of these different elements that you've talked about today?
Yeah, exactly. So I've just explained the dissatisfaction. That's one shadow. There's another one that comes up quite a lot with people who have, because a lot of the people I work with have stopped drinking and they want to know what's next. And so that's when they pick up human design. And so there's that one specifically. The other one I think about is the victim mentality. Again, that could mean that you turn to some sort of coping mechanism, overeating, drinking, drugs, potentially other things. Then there's one where the shadow is numbing. So that's, you actually want to numb out. That's you're absolutely living in your shadow. You're not living in your gift. And so they're probably about 3 or 4 that are really pertinent. And every time I've done a human design reading with someone who stopped drinking, they've had one of those, and that they were at least one, and they were, blown away by the fact that that was probably one of the reasons, because they weren't fully living into their gift. And so it's fascinating. But then as well, there's even more information that we could look at on in your chart in terms of challenges that you might face, what drives you, what your purpose is, and how do you live your purpose. There's so much there. The environment that's good for you, the food, whether warm food or the digestive system, basically. Awareness. There's lots and lots of things that we could cover as we go on. Obviously, the initial, if you wanted to just do a one-to-one human design reading, we could do that, but we wouldn't go into all of that. We get to a point that then, as you go through with the one-to-one coaching, you can, we go and we delve quite deep so that actually you can fully see where your shadows are. And then, through all the different coaching that I do, the mindset coaching, so the releasing of the limiting beliefs and the fears and the shadow work, and then also using tools like EFT, breath work, meditations, affirmations, visualizations, all of those things help you to start moving into and having the right patterns and hobbies and habits, healthier habits to live the life that you are destined to live. So yeah, there's lots of information. And with the quiz, if someone wants to go and do the quiz, it's like a 2-3 minute thing. It's just a bit of fun, but it asks some questions for you to think about in terms of how you would respond to wanting to, to where you are now. So it asks things like, how do you feel after a full busy week? And depending on how you answer that, we're able to see what type you could potentially be. What's your relationship with structure? What feels most true about your relationship with alcohol? And it's a multiple choice. And so, that question was quite interesting. So I'll go into that a little bit. But what feels most true about your relationship with alcohol? And you've got 5 possible answers. So one of it is, I use it to unwind after being on for others. I drink out of habit, but I'm curious about changing that. I feel pressure to drink socially, even when I don't want to. I'm the life of the party, but also the first to burn out. And the 5th one was, I use it when I'm overwhelmed and need a quick reset. And depending on what your answer is, basically points to whether you're a projector, a manifestor, a manifesting generator, a reflector, or a manifestor. And the interesting thing that I found with this quiz, and again, it's completely what I expect, is that people answer the quiz. They take the quiz, they get a type, this is the type, then they download their actual chart based on their birth data, and they might find it's different. And again, it might be different because you're still in your conditioning phase, you're still conditioned. And actually, by stopping drinking, it shows that you can move into the aligned life that you're meant to live and start living your true self and not living in your shadows. So the answer you give might be because you've been conditioned, you're living in your shadows. And then that's where the real work begins, where we then start to see what it is that you're potentially not doing that you could do. And then how can you see alcohol slightly differently if you know that your type doesn't need to do that, or actually that is your type, you do need to rest. So then rest, don't go out for a drink. You don't need to do that. You can do something else. And so again, delving into all of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I just think like compared to all the other people I've heard speak about it, I sometimes get lost in the like, oh, you're supposed to respond, you're supposed to wait, you're supposed to, this is your Energizer bunny. But I think like going really into the specifics of what makes you up and all that kind of stuff, it kind of illuminates something more deeper, I think there, and it makes it
Mm,
really palpable and tangible of like what this human design tool can actually do for you. I think that's really,
yeah.
really fascinating. And it's obviously a really good assessment to use for yourself and then to use as a coaching tool in order to move into that. And I know that this is something that comes up for your clients as well. You're able to see whether a career is aligned or misaligned for someone by their human design, right?
Mm. So again, it's all the not self themes, and there's so many challenges that you might see from the centers that you have. There are also the not self from the strengths that we've talked about, so the shadows. And then there is in the on the sides you've got the planets, so then you can also see things like what drives you and what your potential, what's the challenge you're here to solve, and then your purpose and who you're meant to be, basically. And so different planets with the different gates and the numbers and the lines show you different things, which enable you to then see, I can do a life purpose reading, for example, which covers all of that and brings it all together. And so there is lots there that I think a lot of people scratch the surface, as you say, and when I actually delve into each of these charts, I can share a lot of information, and you can just keep going and going. And they actually say it takes 7 years really for you to really embody and know and see how human design really helps you. And living your human design for 7 years is when you're going to see. I mean, obviously, you'll start seeing something much quicker than that, but that shows how much there is of it and how much we can learn from it. So it's an ever evolving, and as we grow, we see it differently as well. So it's a fascinating system, and as I said, I think everyone should know their human design. So yeah.
Yeah, well, just even you reading my strains, like that helps me so much know how aligned I am with what I'm doing. And there's a lot of facets to being a coach or an online educator or a author, like whatever word. I mean, let's just use the word thought leader, right? That's what we are. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's different ways of being a thought leader. There's different ways of showing up, and there's different strategies and energies that you can embody. And it's like now that I have this list of the ones that are my strengths, I don't have to
Yeah,
feel out of alignment when I'm not like this other person out there or not like this other coach out
exactly.
there. I can really, really lean into these, I think, and just hone in on that beautiful, authentic identity that I'm here to express. So I think that's super
Yeah.
helpful too for professionals, for coaches, for other thought leaders to like really embody that. Like I love storytelling, and this just reminds me like to double down onto that and to like keep sharing stories from the heart and making an impact and stuff like that. Okay, so
Yeah.
first of all, where can people get the quiz and the chart readings? I think that's the first step. If you don't know your type and if you don't know
Yeah.
all these specifics, I think people need to figure that out first. So where can people find that?
Absolutely. Just head to thrivealcoholfree.com/quiz. You can do the quiz. And then if you want the chart, /human design. So thrivealcoholfree.com /human design. But just head to the website and you can click on the right one and get both. So yeah, definitely start with that.
Awesome. And we'll have all that in the show notes. And then we talked about this earlier that you have a special gift for the audience that you're willing to give a 20% discount on any human design, like full reading, which I think is so
Yes.
amazing. I'm so excited for
Yeah.
everyone who's going to take advantage of this. So where can people learn more about that?
So I will send you the specific link and you can put that in the show notes. But if you want to see what a reading is and everything else, then again, head to the website and it talks about what you can expect from a human design session. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I know you have a really busy travel schedule, so this offer won't be around very long. So if this was really interesting to you and you want to know all about your strengths and all about your definition and your profile, and then actually get actionable advice that you can use to start aligning your life to that and to feel into that self that you're supposed to be, definitely take up this offer. It won't be around for very long, Dupe. I learned so much today. This was really exciting. Like, it kind of turned me on again back to human design and how interesting and just fascinating it can be. And thank you for being the expert here on this. I love learning from other people. It's not my job, obviously, to know everything. And it's like so cool to be able to work and communicate and have your expertise just really helping people out there in the world. And I'm just so excited for how many lives are going to be impacted through this.
Oh, Carolina, thank you, such kind words, and thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.